speak, because we see that Putin doesn't want to stop his war. He believes that he can win.
And that is a realization that Donald Trump has come to as well, which was an interesting moment, I'm sure, for the European allies, because we had a president who insisted that he could get this sold and figured out in 24 hours or then 100 days or whatever. And then it turns out that he really isn't able to do that. And all he wants to do is have fun with Putin. And Ukraine is standing in his way, and he is already shown that he is washing his hands of Ukraine, and he is not interested in being even a mediator. He just wants to be out of it completely and have fun with Putin. I think that the statement, such as this tweet in particular, highlights to what extent he may be interested in having a successful outcome, but is demonstrating also that he is not a party to this in any way. Like somebody who's standing outside of a store that's about to open for sale. He's like, I hope they're going to open. We are really hoping. Well, prior to that, America played a much stronger role in making sure that stores were open, I guess. But that is President of the United States as it is now. And the fact that the whole world can see that Putin is basically trolling Trump now is not seem to be registering with the president at all. And that is a fact. And so, for instance, when we just experienced this whole extra, charade with negotiations, which were clearly just a way that Trump was helping Putin to get out from this ultimatum of sanctions that European leaders were about to throw at Russia. And we went through this show. We got nothing out of it. And now there are sanctions. But Trump did what he could to help and also to further remove himself from the so-called peace process, to the point that now we don't even remember how did America get into this really negotiations. So much has happened. And that's part of Trump approach, is that there's so much happening all the time that it's hard for us to keep track of what is going on. So I think it's important on this to kind of step back, see the big picture, and understand that these, negotiations or Keith Kellogg or Steve Witkoff or how do all of those characters and different things that they do, they generally fit into this big gold umbrella of Trump wanting to, love Putin so much. There's an interesting problem for Donald Trump, and that is that Vladimir Putin doesn't like America even more than he values Trump. And he doesn't like America for many years, for many decades. Putin has been fighting America. And so now when we have a president who wishes to personify America, because Donald Trump seems to be a parody of Vladimir Putin, who says, his advisors were known to have said, if there is no Putin, there is no Russia. Well, in a parody of that sketch, we see that Donald Trump is trying to personify and be the king of America. And the problem is that he's king of America, and Vladimir Putin doesn't like America. So it's a fundamental problem for Donald Trump, who is trying to get Putin to like him. He should have been a president of some other country that Vladimir Putin doesn't like so much, quite as much. So I think that there's some really interesting fundamental issues that are difficult for Trump to overcome in his desire to prove how much he loves Putin. It's unclear whether he loves him, if this is a platonic love, if this is a financial based, if this is an honor, like he honors the dictator and wants to be like him, like Putin when he grows up. It's not entirely clear. But what is clear is that Trump wakes up every day with a new vision, like nothing happened, like a blank slate, and with the same desires as the night before. He wants to grab a little more and have a little, as Mr. Burns has said in Simpsons, but I would trade it all for a little bit more, for just a little bit more. So he is reminding me of the story of the goldfish, which is not the story that Americans may think of, but the story that Russians know. Pushkin's version of the old lady who was sitting by her broken wash basin, and caught her old man caught a goldfish, and the old woman kept asking goldfish for more and more and more. And in the end, it kind of backfired. To kind of summarize this whole beautiful poem, it backfired. And so when is this trumping around going to backfire, and how spectacularly, and who is going to pay for it, is what we're kind of observing, because we know that everything Donald Trump touches dies. It's been happened to his business 6 times. It happened to Republican Party. It's unfortunately happening to the United States, which is being, clearly under attack. And it's happening, who knows with who that Donald Trump decides to be partners with. In the end, it's bad for Russia even if Donald Trump is your friend. So I think that they've got some relationship issues where neither one of them is perfect, and both of them, to a certain extent, need each other for now.
But is Donald Trump happy about it? Very happy, as I understand from your previous answer.
I would think that Trump is more pleased because, well, he spoke with Putin. So fundamentally, that was a good day for Donald Trump, that Putin took his call. The second of all, 2 hours. I'm sure that Vladimir Putin told Trump all the history of Russia, like he always does whenever he talks to anybody. Vladimir Putin seems to be just, why? Because he thinks that whole history, it's an interesting point, really. He keeps bringing up all this Russian background to justify the barbaric actions that he and his regime are undertaking today, right? Because it's not just that it's a history for no reason. It's a history as the foundation, explanation for why. And that really, to me, it seems to be one of the worst things that Putin is doing, let's say, to history, because he's perverting everything he touches. And he's perverting history by thinking that history gives him justification to act in a horrible way today. No, history at best is a warning not to act that way today. It's not a permission to act in a certain way. So he's fundamentally just doesn't understand why he's giving this lecture and why people aren't listening, because it's if you're Donald Trump, then you want to listen to whatever Putin is saying. But if you're Ukraine, it doesn't excuse you from the war right now, which is why probably negotiations between Russia and Ukraine aren't going so well. As we know, as we've heard, that they're not planning on any more direct negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, because Donald Trump needed to talk to Putin, so Putin would explain to him, because Donald Trump wanted to know how he's going to get out of this, how this is going to be all sorted out so that Donald Trump could be done with Ukraine. And please, Vladimir, explain to me. And Vladimir explained that he's going to keep doing what he's doing, and Donald should just blame everybody else and get out. Blame Europe. Oh, Europe, it's their fault. And this is not your problem. You just go on your merry way. Maybe, look at Canada over there. So Donald Trump went and said, you know what? I don't think they're ready to make peace. I'm out of here. And you know what? If there's somebody else who wants to deal with this, like Vatican, well, that's perfect. Hand it over to them. You, Vatican, you, Holy See, you do this. And is there a solution yet? Yes, we're all waiting to find out. So he decided to switch from being a performer in the circus to being one of the people sitting in the seats and cheering the clowns on, And it's an interesting attempt to switch positions. And some people will remember, some people will get confused. Some people are going to think about other things that are happening at the same time, then just forget about Donald Trump. But you can't forget about Donald Trump, because even his actions that have to do with, we moved on past the phone call. We're now dealing with him threatening Europe and threatening Apple because he forgot what happened yesterday, that he already made peace with Apple, but he wants another bite of the apple. So he's going at it today. That's Donald Trump that we have. And so there's not going to be another one. So just, I think, kind of moving away from him with the understanding that he's going to be attacking Europe now in an economic way. But once it is officially presumed that he is really with Putin, there's going to be a shift. And I think that's important to understand. The same way that we noticed that there's a distinct shift with the way Donald Trump behaves before and after conviction, the same way that once he becomes kind of расчехлится, when you take off the casing and go, you really are with Putin, aren't you? Then it kind of, I feel, would give him a permission to start acting like he is with Putin because, it's all clear. Everybody knows it anyway. And in that sense, I think we could be looking at a much more dangerous Donald Trump than we are now. But it is a slippery slope, and it's just a matter of time before he gets there.
Yes, really, we have a lot of jokes today about the sanctions, about tariffs against Europe, because all the senators, Marco Rubio, all European leaders calls Trump to make pressure against Russian dictator, to provide sanctions against Russia. And Trump thought, oh, yes, okay, sanctions, Europe, I understood. And Trump announce about tariffs 50% against Europe. Maybe he didn't understand that Europe sanctions and pressure is not about Europe, but Europe and USA together against Russia.
Maybe he understands better in Russian. Who knows? Maybe just that the message was delivered to him in the wrong language. That's all. He recognized some of the words. It's kind of like when I speak to people who speak Ukrainian. I look for words I recognize. He recognized Europe and tariffs and went with it in the way that he could best imagine. It's terrible. It really is terrible. And he also knows that, he lost trade war to China because he escalated quickly to 145% tariffs, which essentially meant trade embargo, so that nobody's wanting buying anything because who wants to pay 2.5 times more for everything, starting with people who are supposed to pay for the tariffs in the first place, so importers. And now he wants to do the same thing with Europe, considering that he already lost and gave up and went back to, 30% with, this is such, I went to and visited Israel and walked around Jerusalem, and there's people in this kind of a Middle Eastern market setting that are really want to argue with you about the price and all of this percent. And it seems like, Donald Trump would feel very comfortable there. He's looking for a bargain. And when he feels like negotiations are not going well, he just goes back on his word. Because what did he say? He said that he's pausing these tariffs for 90 days. Well, has it been 90 days before he officially failed that deadline? No, he decided not to wait this time. This time, he decided to march right in and say, you know what, this is not working well. Negotiations are not going well, probably because, whatever. And so we're going to go back on our word. Perhaps that's why negotiations aren't going well, too, because if you're going to keep going back on your word, who's going to negotiate with you and why? It's almost like who is going to go now and visit White House when you have people like President Zelensky or President of South Africa who are getting attacked there, verbally, and so that's makes an impression. So United States is going to be very quickly marginalizing itself. It's very troubling. It's worrisome because that's not how a leader of the free world is supposed to behave, and there will be consequences for this. When we see markets responding to this in a negative way, that's what happens. There are consequences, and it's interesting to see if Trump administration will listen to bond markets or whatever markets that make that money. Maybe who knows how cryptocurrency will respond to this, but hopefully one way or another it will connect with a nerve ending that will make him stop. And I think that this is just a matter of time before somebody loses enough money and they knock through and then explain to him. But I think that's a challenge where I think business people should fundamentally understand that, once again, capitalism is in danger. Their welfare is in danger. Their prosperity, their wealth is in serious danger because of Donald Trump. What they're going to do about it is they're people with means. They should understand this responsibility, that this is their responsibility, that they're letting this world be destroyed because they're trying to negotiate with Trump. And he's going to come back tomorrow and ask and tell you to give him more. And then the next day, more, until that's how he operates. That's why there's 6 times bankruptcies, because that's not how you run a business long term. This is how you make short-term speculations, which is what he's clearly interested in doing. So I think that there are some people who need to understand that they have influence, and it's not politicians right now. I think it's the people with means and the money that have more influence over this president. But when we see that he just had a crypto coin dinner at White House, and people who were there spent at least $40 million on his cryptocurrency, and clearly many of them were not even from the United States, well, that just brings us back to the plane from Qatar and to what extent this president is, owned by another country. And it's also important for him to find somebody who is going to be ultimately held responsible. I think anybody who understands, I would say Russian approach, when you don't want to be the last one, when there's like, whose fault is this? So it's very important to be able to point finger at somebody. Therefore, even when it's tariffs, which is his, he liked it, he loves it because he doesn't need anybody else, he still recommends. Interesting. So I guess it's not really his fault or responsibility. That somebody else, some other Trump, maybe Eric Trump. I don't know. Maybe Stephen Miller. Who would Donald Trump? Vladimir Putin. He will recommend tariffs to Vladimir Putin. And if Vladimir Putin approves, then, Donald Trump, he's a little person. He's just a president here, But it's this guy in Kremlin that totally got him by the, price on eggs. And so he can't do anything. So he'll just recommend tariffs and see what happens.
Yes, they really have so much in common, Trump and Putin. And
Irina, I think this is a very important point, and that is understanding the similarity between Putin and Trump. Because there are people who will say that they are very different, because Trump is a capitalist who is interested in deals, and while Putin is more of a power grabber, secret police, all of that stuff. But I think that they actually have a lot in common because they're both fakers. And one of them faked being a successful businessman, and the other one faked being a spy. And so they constantly have to prove that they are not who they really are. And the question there goes back to accountability. What is the accountability for faking this kind of stuff? If you're faking that you're a businessman, then there's consequences because there's accountability. There's a bankruptcy, as I've mentioned, for Trump 6 times. For Putin, less worry because he runs a country that cannot declare bankruptcy, although in the late 90s, they essentially, there was some collapse. And so it's not like Russia hasn't had economic problems. So they both clearly suck at running things. I think that whether there's going to be accountability for Putin, it's hard to imagine other than, in hell. And I think that there's going to be, a circle of hell perhaps named after him. Who knows? Because he should be recognized for his contributions to, moving hell on earth, to kind of creating that connection. Thanks, Vladimir. But the consequences for Trump, I think, are much more direct and really should be predictable. His policy and his politics are really doing a lot of damage to the United States and to people of the United States. People who voted against Donald Trump and also for people who voted for Donald Trump. And those people are going to go and vote because they're going to remember that even unlike COVID, this is something that these tariffs, they did not exist prior to Donald Trump. And I'd like to make this very clear. If Kamala Harris was president right now, there would be no tariff wars. We would continue aiding Ukraine at least at the level at which Joseph Biden was aiding Ukraine. Enough or not enough, whatever, we would be at a very different level than we're looking at right now. And I think that's the part of elections having consequences. We chose to stay at home, not vote for Kamala Harris. Too many people did. And as a result, we now have Donald Trump, who feels that he can do whatever he wants, that he caught the goldfish. He is the president of the United States. He can do whatever he wants. Again, we'll see to what consequences that will lead, but there are elections. If there's going to be elections, and there's going to be elections on which Donald Trump is likely to pay a heavy price. That's why he pays so much attention right now to what's happening in midterms and is looking for candidates, basically auditioning candidates to for Congress and for Senate, because he understands that if he loses House of Representatives, they're going to start impeachment hearings. And if he's going to lose Senate, they're going to finish impeachment hearings. And so he can't let either thing happen, and that's how he's fighting against accountability, by fighting elections. And the further he goes to trying to disable the rule of law in the United States, the more questions arise about whether we're going to have elections or not. So, but I think it's important to presume that we will, because if we presume that we won't, then that's even worse. We have to presume that things are going to go as scheduled. At the same time, preparing for the possibility that Donald Trump will attempt to do something, especially if things are not going well for him, to derail processes that do not work well for him, which he has done consistently throughout his life. So there's not even anything new. Not to mention that if Donald Trump isn't in the White House, he could have lots of legal problems for a variety of reasons. Therefore, chances of him leaving the White House are diminished by that alone. So we have Putin and we have Trump, two fakers who are trying to avoid accountability. And if they stay where they are, will only find accountability in the next world. So I think it is important to understand this, how much they have in common, how much they're fighting to prove that they are who they're not. And accountability is something that either is going to happen by some other hand or by ours. This is, we as voters in the United States have a lot more options and weight than those that live in Russia, where they can just do an uprising. And that's what usually happens in Russia. From time to time, they have an uprising, a bunt, kravavi bunt, bloody, rebellion, uprising, when they, destroy one group of people and put another group of people in power and continue with the same way, because they don't know any other way. We in the United States do know another way. We have had, for instance, Joseph Biden, and we had Barack Obama, and we had other presidents who, whether they liked it, whether we liked their policy or not, they respected courts, they respected Congress, they respected Senate, and we will have them again. These sanctions, this statement about sanctions or law is more of a fig leaf to cover up the fact that we're not providing any pressure on Putin. But it seems interesting that Donald Trump continues to be interested, quietly albeit, in sanctions on Putin. He renewed quietly sanctions that were put in place by Biden. I was surprised. And he, in general, continues to have some of those sanctions remain in place. And even this. And I think part of it is that Donald Trump understands that if there are no sanctions, that there's no leverage on Vladimir Putin, especially leverage that he can attribute not to himself, but to, evil Lindsey Graham, Lindsey Graham, and those senators, 81 senators that Donald Trump just can't overcome, then it looks like Vladimir Putin still has to call Donald Trump once in a while, still has to talk to him, still has to be interested in him, because otherwise, who needs poor Donald? And so I think that might be one of the strategies behind just trying to stay engaged and put some quieter pressure on Putin. But at the same time, if these sanctions can be negotiated, I mean, Trump is always looking for a way to let Russia off the hook. So chances that this I don't know what is it? The word escapes me. Whatever it is that Lindsey Graham is pushing forward in Senate is going to have. It could be another way for Trump to use as leverage to really just take sanctions off of Russia, which is what he ultimately wants to do. He wants to put sanctions on like everybody else and take them off. Well, Russia has zero tariffs already, so now just sanctions and tariffs for everybody. It's a very Russian way of looking at things. For friends, everything. For others, the law. You know, you can say, look at it from this point. Yes, I mean, yes, it can be considered usurpation, capitulation of the United States before Russia. But if we say that Donald Trump looks up to Vladimir Putin and wants to be like Vladimir Putin, well, then what is Russia but capitulated and usurped by China? So this is just really Donald Trump's way of repeating what his guru is doing. You sell your people out to the neighbor, to somebody else who wants to pay for all of this, who is willing to sponsor you and your whatever ideas you have. Democracy, who needs that? So I think that Donald Trump is just continuing on his merry way, and everything is great in his world. And it's just that he's trying to create two worlds, one where he lives and people that are with him, whether it's Elon Musk or whoever, Vladimir Putin, and the other world where the rest of us live. And we can see it in the budget that House of Representatives has passed, and Senate is now going to do something with. Who knows? But House of Representatives predictably folded and bent to Donald Trump's will, which only highlights how much leverage Donald Trump has with this Congress. And so they did what he wanted, and the budget is going to reflect his priorities, and Republican Party is the party of Trump. And how do we go back from this? Like, we go and vote. I think of all the approaches to trying to get Russia to realize that this war is not in its best interests, I like Vitaly Portnikov's approach of generally targeting infrastructure. I feel that even direct attacks on Moscow will be, exciting to watch on TV and will warm the heart of millions of people, will not lead to the end of war necessarily if Putin is able to continue to fight. However, if he loses his ability to resupply his troops completely, that makes more sense as a way where he would just run out of options. And it is, of course, possible that he will continue to purchase his cannon fodder from other places, from other countries, as he already done. But besides just destroying cannon fodder, which Ukraine has done, and even Donald Trump has acknowledged this when he said to Vladimir Putin that, remember, Vladimir, that 5,000, because the favorite number is 5,000 people of Russian and Ukrainians die all the time. By the way, whenever Donald Trump says that, I just hear that, Vladimir, you're running out of your currency. Your currency is your cannon fodder. You're running out of it. You have limited means. Come on, Vladimir. And so that's the currency that Putin has, and he is losing it, and therefore making it harder for him to use it, and in general, using drones to the level that is basically Ukraine is now the forefront of how warfare is going to be happening in 21st century, which is really an incredibly painful and tragic accomplishment that has been accomplished by people who refuse to surrender and refuse to die, and people who refuse to become part of Russian empire, who make amazing technological and intellectual and intelligence advances, especially when working with the United States to stop Russia. I think stopping Russia is an incredible motivation for a lot of people and countries. You know, when Ukraine could identify itself by just not being Russia, I think it's a powerful statement for what Russia is, that other people just don't want to be it. And so Russia is going to remain Russia. They're going to use their ballistic rockets to hit apartment buildings, because, you know, apartment buildings are dangerous and they, you know, run around, and then you never know. It's ridiculous. It's tragic. There's a place in hell for people who do this. And at the same time, Ukraine has to acknowledge this and move forward, because there is no choice. Ukraine can't lose. Ukraine only can win. So I think that it's important to acknowledge the worst possible scenario and then move towards the victory, because it's our only choice.
And thank you for such support and for your time and for our summits and for our conversation. Yuri, thank you today. See you next week and see you in our Russian-Ukrainian format too. Take care.
Thank you. And once again, I want to just express my support from all people who are following Ukraine, for heroism of Ukrainian people, including yourself, who are reporting, not a first year, for years from war setting. So thank you to you, and all the best, and Slava Ukraini.
Heroям Slava. Thank you. Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English. You can find these YouTubes under this video. Please subscribe to it and subscribe to YouTube channel War and Politics 24. My name is Irina Uzlova. Thank you for watching and joining us. Take care.